Have you ever stopped to think about how we go from a baby's first sounds to, debating big ideas? It is one of the most incredible journeys any of us ever take, and it's all powered by language. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how that happens, how we turn simple sounds into the very tools we use to think. All right, let's get right into it.
So let's kick things off with a little question for you. What's the very first language skill you ever mastered? Here's a hint. You were basically a pro at it for a full year before you even uttered your first word. Any ideas? The answer, it turns out, is the foundation for everything else.
Yep, you guessed it. It's listening. Before we can produce a single word, we have to just take it all in. Listening is the most fundamental skill. It's the essential input that makes everything else possible.
Now, in the world of linguistics, this is called a receptive skill. But don't let that word receptive fool you into thinking it's passive, because it's not. When we're listening, we are actively soaking up all the building blocks of language. The rhythm, the tone, the stress on certain words. It's like our brains are in this massive data collection phase.
So how exactly does our brain make sense of all this sound? Well, one way is through what's called bottom-up processing. The best way to think about this is to picture yourself as a detective. You're focusing on every single clue, the individual sounds, piecing them into words, then into sentences, until you've solved the puzzle of what's being said. It's all about decoding the data piece by piece. But, we can't always be that meticulous detective. So the other way we listen is with top-down processing. This is the big picture approach. You use what you already know about the world, about the situation, to make really good, educated guesses about the meaning. You're anticipating what's coming next rather than decoding every little sound. And the crazy thing is, we're using both of these skills constantly, flipping back and forth without even noticing. Think about it. You're in a noisy train station, straining to hear your platform number. That's your brain in full-on bottom-up mode. But when you're just chatting with a friend, getting the gist of their story, that's top-down processing at its best.
Okay, so after we spend about a year just absorbing the world like a sponge, what happens next? Well, naturally, we start making our own sounds. We start to act on the world using language. And that brings us to skill number 2, speaking.
And this is what's known as a productive skill. It's pretty straightforward, right? If listening is the input, speaking is the output. This is the expressive part, where we finally take all that data we've collected and use it to share our own thoughts, our feelings, and our needs.
And this, right here, brings us to one of the biggest debates in language learning. What's more important when you're just starting? Is it fluency? Just letting the words flow, getting your point across? Or is it accuracy, making sure every single sentence is perfectly correct, by the book? It's really a question of meaning versus form.
Well, I'll give you a little insider tip from the world of education. Especially with kids in the early stages, the answer is crystal clear. You go for fluency. The main goal is just to get them comfortable expressing themselves, to let communication happen without being afraid of making a mistake. You can always circle back and polish the grammar later. The really crucial part right at the beginning is building up the confidence to just talk.
We talk to communicate, right? Well, yeah, but it's so much more than that. A linguist named Halliday came up with this amazing idea that language actually has 7 secret jobs that it does for us, especially when we're growing up. Let's break them down.
First up, we've got the instrumental function. This is language at its most basic, using words as a tool to get something you want. It's the toddler pointing and saying water, or asking for a cookie. This is probably the first time we realize, hey, my words can actually change my world.
All right. Next on the list is the regulatory function. This is where we use language to control what other people do. Think of simple commands like stop or come here. It's also happening when kids are laying out the rules for a game they just made up. We're using our words to direct action. Third, and this one's a biggie, is the interactional function. This is all about social connection. It's the language that acts like social glue. The hellos, the how are yous, all the little things we say to build and maintain our relationships with each other. Number 4 is the personal function. This is where we get to show the world who we are. It's how we use language to express our unique identity and share what's going on inside. When you give your opinion, like I love this song, or share how you feel, that's the personal function in action.
Okay, number 5 is the heuristic function. And if you've ever been around a little kid, you know this one all too well. This is language as a tool for learning. It's driven by all those questions. Why is the sky blue? How does that work? As we use words to figure out the world around us.
Then we have the 6th function, which is maybe the most fun of all, the imaginative one. This is the language of make-believe.
It's how we tell stories, crack jokes, and invent entire fantasy worlds. This is language totally unleashed from the rules of reality. And last but not least, number 7 is the representational function. Now, this is probably the one we think of most often. It's the straightforward job of just conveying facts and information. It's the "I've got something to tell you" function, where we're just sending data from one person to another.
So language helps us get stuff, connect with people, and learn about the world. But what if it does something even deeper? What if language is the very tool that we use to think? And this brings us to a really powerful idea from a psychologist named Lev Vygotsky.
So to get our heads around this, think about something you've probably seen a million times. Ever seen a little kid playing, maybe with some blocks or a puzzle, and they're just chattering away to themselves? What is going on there?
See, Vygotsky's big, game-changing idea was that this isn't just meaningless chatter. What's really happening is that kids are using language as a tool to organize their actions and their thoughts. They are literally thinking out loud. That little monologue is their brain making its problem-solving process visible.
Now, this idea was actually pretty controversial. It was part of this huge debate between two giants of psychology. On one side, you had Jean Piaget. He called it egocentric speech, and basically thought it was useless, just a sign of immaturity that kids eventually grow out of. But Vygotsky, on the other hand, called it private speech and argued it was an absolutely essential tool for a kid's development.
So who was right? Well, after decades of research, the verdict is in. Vygotsky pretty much nailed it. That private speech is a vital part of how we learn to plan, guide our own behavior, and solve problems. And it doesn't just fade away. Instead of disappearing, it just goes underground. It becomes that inner voice, the one you're using to listen to me right now.
Okay, so this is all really cool theory, right? But what does it actually look like in the real world? Like, how does this show up in a classroom or out on the playground? Let's check out a couple of real-world examples. First off, and this is so important, we have to get that not all language is created equal. There's a huge difference between the casual, everyday language we use with friends, that's called BICS, and the formal, more abstract language you find in a textbook, that's called CALP. And just look at the difference in how long it takes to learn them. A kid can pick up playground talk in just a couple of years, but mastering academic language, that can take 5, 6, even 7 years.
Okay, let's go back to that kid with the puzzle. Imagine a child marking on a tough puzzle, and she starts talking to herself. She's saying things like, okay, this piece has blue on it. Maybe it goes in the sky. Nope, that doesn't fit. Let me try this other one.
And now, because we know about Vygotsky, we can see exactly what's happening here. This is a perfect example of private speech. She's not just talking, she's using language as a tool to focus her attention, to plan her next move, and to control her own thinking process. What you're watching is literally the process of learning happening in real time.
So, when you put it all together, language isn't just a subject we learn in school. It's the tool we use to learn, the way we connect with each other, and the very scaffolding for our own thoughts. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If language is the tool that builds our thoughts, just imagine what new worlds, what new ways of thinking you could build just by learning another one.